Grammar, for most of us, is a four-letter word. In fact, my own English department years ago invented a course called Grammar that many students requested. It became eventually a bigger course, and we called it Grammar and Style. And then it became even a bigger course, and we called it Style. It's as if we couldn't use that word grammar. But what I'd like to ask you to do with me tonight is to look at grammar from a much larger point of view, and to look at it in two different ways. Linguists often talk about sentence structure or syntax, and lexicon, the words that go into that syntax. As a matter of fact, the great essayist and novelist Annie Dillard once said that these two things, sentence structure and lexicon, are the tools that the mind uses to put together life, to actually save our very lives. Perhaps that's wonder number one about grammar. But she also decided that the grammar, or the sentence structure, would be her bucket, and the words would be her matching shovel. So I'm going to ask you tonight to grab your shovels and buckets and come along with me to look at grammar, first of all, as a three-letter word, not four. Why? Because as it turns out, linguists look at languages all around the world using three letters, S, V, O. You can guess what they are: subject, verb, object. Still back there from third grade somewhere. Notice that English is part of 35% of the world's languages that uses that basic pattern of SVO. Others switch it around and switch it up. But for us in English, we basically have made our own variations of this SVO pattern, coming down to only three possibilities. One, the old SVO, like she reads books, called traditionally transitive verbs. The other, just plain she reads, something she does. And third, she is a reader, a kind of complement that we use after the verb be. So, what we find in English is we have these kinds of choices. When we think, when we write, when we come up with anything at all in our minds, we basically have to use one of these three patterns. That's all we have. So we either do something to somebody or something, or we just do, or we just be. So you might ask, what does this have to do with knowing wonder? Well, I wanted to set the stage a bit to play with these kinds of structures as we think about what knowing wonder is all about in this kind of context. So let's try it, play a little bit with this word wonder. First one, I wonder if we can know wonder. Or, I wonder. Or, that is a wonder. Well, as English speakers, you will notice right away a couple of things. One, this word wonder is both a verb and a noun. Guess what? That means it's S and V and O, depending on where it falls, right? I wonder and wonder both ways. Second thing you might notice is that very first basic pattern, subject, verb, object, comes only in a certain way when we use the verb wonder. Wonder will not accept just any old single word to be that object. It demands something more. If you wonder, you have to wonder a whole idea, a whole question. You have to wonder if, when, why, where. Wonder won't accept just that little word O. So if we move on, the first thing we can probably do, if we look at this sentence we're playing with tonight, which I'm going to call we know wonder, we can ask at least three kinds of questions. One, what do we know about that word wonder? Two, what kind of knowing are we talking about? And three, what do we do actually when we construct this kind of meaning? What's going on in our heads? So let's start where most people start when we look at words. We like to go to the dictionary. I've gone to the biggest dictionary in the world, which is the OED, the Oxford English Dictionary, to find something about the etymology of wonder. And curiously enough, look what we found. It all comes from the same Germanic line, but even the lexicographers of the OED cannot find where it came from. Wonder itself is of an unknown origin. Perfect thing for wonder, huh? Okay. Secondly, we might look at a couple of definitions. We just mentioned that this word can be a noun and a verb. As a noun, we always associate with something like astonishment or something like an emotion of the unexpected or the inexplicable, always going beyond those simple boundaries. If we look at it as a verb, same thing. We've already seen it. And in the first sense of wonder as to marvel about something, and secondly, this curious one that comes with a clause. In other words, it insists on us doubting or having some curiosity or being desirous to know something more. That's what the verb wonder actually expects and demands, even in the grammar. So, As you know, dictionaries are only one way of looking at words. There are all kinds of other things we have to realize, and mostly we have to look at context, history, usage. So words go up, words go down, words get big, words get smaller. Wonder's no exception. Look what happened when wonder got attached to full. It became a kind of ordinary word. I had a wonderful time last night. You're not thinking about real wonder, just had a good time, right? Same thing happened to awe, right? Funny thing about awe is it became absolutely negative, right? When full got attached to awe, it became bad. I had an awful time last night, right? And then same thing with awesome. You all know, anybody under 30 uses this word at least 6 times a day, right? And it doesn't mean awe at all, really. It's just something great, right? Awesome, great. Okay. That happened also in wonder. And look what happened when we look at the history of the word easily. We used to talk about the wonders of the world, the 7 wonders. Do you still have some out there? Have you been to a wonder recently as a tourist? Or what about Alice? When's the last time you felt the wonder of Alice's Wonderland? Or remember this? Do you know what wonder tastes like? Hope you don't. 1950s, we thought this was wonderful, right? Full of taste. And then this guy, why does he have an S on his shirt? When the woman got the W, the wonder. So I'll let you ponder those ups and downs of the word as we've seen as we move to our second question, which is talking about, based on this structure, we know wonder, talking about the verb know. I think most of you will agree that know has at least 2 basic, very different meanings. To know someone or to know something. In fact, when we try to translate this verb know into other languages, we often need 2 different verbs. It happens in French. You can't use the same verb know if you're talking about knowing someone that you'd use knowing something. So knowing a multiplication table is probably not the knowing that we're talking about tonight. More like the one about knowing a person. And of course, Stevie Wonder comes to mind as our person for the night. So, for example, you might write a poetic line like this: she knew that wonder would stop by, personifying that wonder in a way that really makes us think about something that was very, very hard to essentially know. But we might meet her. But I want you to try something else. One last little linguistic game. Take the verb know, and now the verb wonder, add an ing to both, and it automatically makes you think of a process. This ing in English always makes us think of something going along, right, continuing. So I want to give you a little challenge while I tell you another little story. Think about the process of knowing, or the process of wondering. What kind of images come to your mind? What do you think about when you think about the process of both of those verbs? You do that for a minute while I tell you about an interesting experiment. There's some cognitive scientists out in California, perhaps another wonderland, but nonetheless, they're very interested in how we construct meanings of words, especially abstract words like wonder and knowledge. And what they did was, they took 2 groups of people. One group was in a library looking for books, doing research. The other was a group in a bar, enjoying some beers. They showed them the same picture, this little girl, and they asked, is this a smile of joy? Or is this a smile of happiness? And what do you think happened? Well, it turns out the people in the library thought it was, more than likely, a smile of happiness. The people in the bar thought it was a smile of joy. Why? Because they were experimenting with something called the embodied simulation hypothesis, which suggests that the way that we get to understand abstract words is to actually simulate the actions that are implied with words around them. For example, if I said, did you grasp my meaning? Did you grasp my concept? The mind is actually doing exactly the same thing with that abstract concept as it would do if I said, did you grasp that ball? So in this case, you're thinking about what you just were challenged to think about. What kinds of things happened when you were thinking about the process of knowing and the process of wondering? I would submit that many of you probably have a very different image in your head of knowledge, maybe little things building up like books on a shelf, something like that, or others of you may have other, but more sort of containing things that you can add up, as opposed to wonder. It doesn't work that way, does it? Kind of feel like it's something way beyond that, something that you really can't contain, something that may be almost like water. And for example, let's look what happened when Robinson Jeffers, whose poem called Wonder and Joy, contains this beautiful line in the middle. A wonder pure must ever well within me. And I hope you noticed what happened to well. Remember that noun-verb thing? Well is actually a noun that's turned into a verb, which I'm trying to urge you to do with wonder tonight, to verb that noun, wonder, as he's verbing well. And notice what it did for your image. The image of the well suggests that wonder that's unfathomable, that deep, deep place in the well that you can't see the end of, captured right there in that verb next to the noun wonder. So let's go back for some final choices and challenges. Here with our original sentences, you remember that first one that demanded something more than that little word? Remember the second one? I'm going to vote right now for my final thought to share with you, that grammar is neither a four-letter word nor a three-letter word, but perhaps a two-letter word. And the two letters, of course, are subject, verb. The subject is you and me, we. The verb is wonder. And what's interesting about putting it in that context is that linguists notice very often these kinds of verbs are intransitive, which means they can sit by themselves. They only need themselves. And they often describe things that basic human beings do. We sleep, we talk, we walk, we cry, we shout. All those things are intransitive verbs. They need nothing more. So I want to suggest to you what happens when we put wonder in that category and think about it as one of those very, very basic human needs, something that we really have to do. And I think that Alan Lightman might agree with me. Alan Lightman is an essayist, he's a novelist, he's a theoretical physicist, and he ended a recent article that he wrote in Harper's Magazine. And this is the guy, by the way, who spends his life wondering about really big stuff, like what happened before the Big Bang, like how can we even imagine something without space or time? Big, big questions. And his idea is that's what really human beings need to do. And here's his suggestion. I would add, he says, one more category at the very top of the pyramid, and he's talking about the famous Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. He would add, even above self-actualization, these two words, imagination and exploration. And I would submit to you that those are two very nice, kind of double-headed synonyms for wonder. The idea of pushing, exploring, and using our imagination in that unfathomable way. So I leave you with this thought. You've probably all seen this famous pyramid, but let's walk through it one last time. Yes, we need food. Yes, we need security. Yes, we need relationships. And yes, we need self-esteem. And yes, we need to rise to our full potential. But guess what? More than anything else, we need to wonder.